Welcome to Courtsiders. I'm your host, Eric. With me, I have Dimitri.
What's up, guys?
Long time, no talk. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
yeah, it's been a little while. We've seen a few things develop across the league.
Yeah. Yeah, little
Just a
things,
couple.
little things here and there across the league. So basically, in the time that we haven't spoke, Brooklyn Nets have been eliminated. The Denver Nuggets have been eliminated. Los Angeles Lakers have been eliminated. Utah Jazz. Basically, everyone has been eliminated except 4 teams.
Yep.
And the teams are Los Angeles Clippers. My God, they made it without Kawhi Leonard. Impossible. Terrence Mann coming out of nowhere. Legendary performance against the Utah Jazz, kicking them out of the arena. And then you have Phoenix Suns, who are on a roll right now. Swept the Nuggets, are on fire. No pun intended from Phoenix Suns. And then you got...
And they're getting Chris Paul back.
And they're getting Chris Paul back. Then you got on the East Coast, Milwaukee Bucks. They got over the hump finally, right? And then you have the underdogs basically of the whole playoffs, the Atlanta Hawks, who still have an interim coach.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be interim too much longer, though.
No, they might build him a statue at the end of the season and
Honestly.
a big fat contract.
Yep. Lifetime contract right there. If they win the championship, does that sort of justify the Luka trade for you?
I mean, I think it's already justified. I honestly do believe like TRAE has gone through the Knicks in one of the loudest arenas in the NBA, and then he goes to Philadelphia in one of the loudest and rowdiest arenas in the NBA. And he didn't have the greatest Game 7. He was actually pretty off, and HUERTER really put the team on his back. It was almost like a
Red
battle.
Velvet.
Red Velvet, Red Rocket, Red Mamba.
Whatever you want to call him.
Whatever you want to call him. He was picky on Seth Curry defensive. He was picky on him, and it just made sense because at the end of the day, Joel Embiid's gonna get his points. Tobias Harris might get his points, and then we'll get into Ben Simmons. But
yeah, and then we'll get into Ben Simmons.
HUERTER he was pulling off some amazing shots yesterday, and he just looks very, like, I don't know, he just doesn't seem like a threat, but he was just putting down some hammers yesterday and hitting the mid-range, hitting some threes, clutch shots.
I think he's just bigger than you think he is too. He's like, he pulls a Kyle Korver on you where you think he's small, but then you look at him and you're like, wait, he's like 6'7", right?
Yeah, he's like Gabe from The Office, but yeah, he's just like super tall, lanky. He just looks nonchalant, like normal person walking down the street, but he's at 6'7", so it was interesting. I think one of the turning points last night was when Gallinari hit a 3-pointer when they were down 4.
They just have so many guys.
But also his post-up defense was crazy because he's a big dude now. Like, he was always kind of a big dude, Gallinari, but now he's got like the dad strength and the dad bod. So, I think it was such a clutch 3 that he hit because they were down 4. Atlanta Hawks are down 4. He hit a big arcing 3. Now then they were down 1. And I think that was a turning point. I think it was like 7 minutes ago. But now Philadelphia 76ers are looking for answers. Doc Rivers again kind of falls flat with another team last year.
You think he lasts this offseason?
I think he'll last this year, but I think if he falls flat again, I think he's out.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the blame was going around versus
Brett
Brett
Brown.
Think
Simmons falls this season, and then next season, if they fail again, I think Doc falls.
I think they're putting a lot of the blame on Ben Simmons, but you could honestly say that it was also Doc Rivers kind of. He's
not a coach. He's just. I think he's a little bit washed.
The only time he's really, gone over the hump, he had 3 Hall of Famers. So.
Yep.
His record in the playoffs isn't great, and he has a hard time adjusting to game plans. So I think he's very linear. He's not non-linear. So if the game is going one way, it's going to go that way, And I was surprised that actually he was playing Maxey, but I think he had no option but to play Maxey because he usually doesn't depend on younger players that much.
They just needed more creation, and Ben Simmons wasn't providing that.
Yeah, and I think Ben Simmons is a good like lightning rod, especially right now with the Philly fans and the Philly brigade. But I think Doc Rivers has a lot of blame to take as well. I think he kind of dodged it yesterday. I think he took a timeout with like 45 seconds to go to just yell at his team. So it was kind of weird. Um, and now, there are rumors about Ben Simmons. His stock is low. Where is he going? People are betting money. Where is he going? Portland. He's going to Oklahoma City. He might go to Spurs. He might go to Chicago. Big things about Chicago. And people are like, dude, why would they trade Zach for Ben Simmons? It's
Yeah, I
mad
don't see
ridiculous.
that. I
If
don't see.
anything, they would trade Kobe White, Laurie, and other people for Ben Simmons. And then
Yeah,
even
it would definitely be Kobe and Laurie.
And then even then, yeah, maybe like try to get Denzel Valentine out of there, like ship him out. Uh but
Please
Kobe
take this
White,
name.
yeah, the rights to Denzel Valentine's social media accounts and Laurie Markkinen and Kobe White. I think Kobe White would look pretty good in Philadelphia, to be told. Truth be told.
I think the fit does make some sense for sure. I think he'd overlap a little bit with Tyrese Maxey, but I see where you're coming from.
So do you think the 76ers, Daryl Morey, will try to trade Ben Simmons in this offseason? What do you think?
I do think he will. I do think he will. I mean, all signs are pointing towards that. They did say they were going to try today to fix things with him, but I'm not sure how that. I'm not sure. They've been saying that every single season, right? That's maybe Morey wants to give it another year, but those comments by Doc were pretty damning, and so were Embiid's. So it's pretty tough to see them going from here on out.
Yeah, that's kind of the holy trinity about the 76ers basketball right now. It's Doc Rivers, Joel Embiid, and Daryl Morey. Basically, three of the most important decision makers there, excluding Elton Brand, who, of course, is a really important in that organization. So if they don't think that Ben Simmons can get him there, I think he's out. And honestly, I think there were like rumblings earlier this season about Ben Simmons getting traded, right? I think there were rumors about that with James Harden and stuff like that. So I think he's been on that list for a little bit, but I think his stock is really low right now. So I don't know why Daryl Morey would, trade him because he's not going to get a lot back from him. I mean, his contract is heavy, and I think at the last year of his contract, you have to pay him $40 million. So it's pretty heavy, especially on your cap. And it depends on the team. I think if you're a team that you're looking for the next step up, I think Ben Simmons is a good addition. I think if you're looking like teams like Cleveland and stuff like that, why not?
Yeah, I think he does make a lot of sense for the Cavs. But do you think he also makes sense for even a team like the Raptors right now, who have a tendency with Masai Ujiri to kind of buy low on prospects, or not buy low on prospects, buy low on guys who are disgruntled with their organizations. I mean, we've seen it with Kawhi Leonard, but I could see this very much the same thing with Ben Simmons here. They do need a five, and I could see Ben Simmons playing a very similar role to Bam Adebayo in their offense.
I mean, Ben Simmons would be an upgrade from Ken Birch, and Birch is a great player, but Ben Simmons is like an all
Yeah,
NBA
with all due
defensive team.
respect,
Yeah,
Ben
well,
Simmons is.
yeah, with all due respect, yeah, like Mark Jackson up in here, like with all due respect, like he is an all defensive NBA player, probably for the
I
rest of
mean,
his
you'd have
career.
two of the most switchable defenders in the entire league with Joel, or not, sorry, not Joel, OG Anunoby and Ben Simmons. Honestly, those two guys were some of the most switchable, versatile defenders in the entire league. And just to have them both next to each other would be insane. Then you're thinking of Pascal Siakam and Gary Trent Jr. and whoever they roll this year with their pick, whether that be like a Jaden Springer, a guy like Cade Cunningham, or a Jalen Suggs. Even that would be a ridiculous lineup when you really think about it. For the future, they would be very, very well set up.
Yeah, if you have Pascal Siakam and Ben Simmons, there would be an
I mean,
OG.
and a top 2021 guy and Gary Trent Jr. I mean, it's just a ridiculous team when you really think about it. The move makes a lot of sense by a fit standpoint for both teams, especially assuming they're sending like a Lowry or a Van Vliet in the move, and then they'd be, sending maybe a Boucher, considering the Sixers have been looking for that backup big, and Boucher can provide the floor spacing as well. And there are a lot of aspects to that move that does make a lot of sense.
So there is another trade. I mean, I think the Fred VanVleet would be tempting for Philadelphia, knowing that they do need some sort of point guard, right? So I think like Fred VanVleet, you have Chris Boucher, and you have Malachi Flynn going to Philadelphia, maybe throw in some picks there. And I think it could work because you're giving the Sixers 2 point guards, and you're giving them kind of like a stretch big in Chris Boucher. So I think it would make sense for both teams. For the Toronto Raptors, they automatically get even better at defensively with Pascal Siakam and Ben Simmons and OG, and you still have Kyle Lowry there. Maybe you could re-sign him, you know. So
That's the thing, right? If it's Lowry still there, or like assuming you throw either Lowry or Fred in the move, right, and you're able to retain the other one, you'd be starting Lowry or Fred, and then Gary, and then OG, and then Siakam and Simmons at the five. I mean, that's the perfect lineup that everybody would want, right? In theory, for Simmons, a bunch of guys that can just shoot the basketball, create their own shot, and play defense around him. That's pretty much the perfect fit when you think about it. I think that makes the Raptors go, assuming they can hit on their 2021 pick and they can swing a trade for Simmons. I think that brings them back into contender status within a few years.
so yeah, that one definitely makes sense with Masai Ujiri kind of being that GM that's really aggressive and stuff like that, and taking advantage of low stock. So there's another team that you want to talk about, which is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and it would make sense putting him in that team with Towns. You have Ant-Man. You have a lot of players, Jaden. So what do you think what do you think like would take for the Minnesota Timberwolves to pry Ben Simmons out of Philadelphia? What do you think would take?
It's a tough ask because I actually don't know if they're not willing to give up Ant-Man or Jaden McDaniels, because I've heard Jaden is untouchable in this kind of trade for Ben Simmons, because they'd see him as the future three there. I mean, I don't know if their package is that great. I think it would probably, they don't, do they have a future pick to send out? Because I know they can't send 2022 given that they've given it to the Warriors, correct? I don't know how bad their future pick situation is, but um, it gets complicated because I think they would want to give Malik Beasley in that kind of trade. And I also just don't know if that's what the 76ers would want, really. Because you've already got that creator from the perimeter at the two with Seth Curry. I don't know if Malik Beasley has those charges, and it just seems like unnecessary baggage. Like the other guy would be like Ricky Rubio to match the salary, right? And then who are you sending as a prospect if you're not sending Ant-Man or Jaden? Like maybe Leandro Bomaro, Jared Culver. Like the prospects you're sending aren't that great, right? They're just not. When you think about it, just the quality of the guys they could send, and I do think it hurts Malik's reputation given what happened. I just don't see their package as good as the other teams. But as far as a fit standpoint, I mean, if you're looking for a fit better than the Wolves, you'll be hard pressed to find one other than maybe the Raptors or the Blazers. You're looking at a team that could easily play him at the four with a spacing five, and you have guys that could create like Jaden, and D'Lo, who all could be very good options around Ben in theory, assuming they all develop properly. They could all be solid defenders and shot creators. And Ben Simmons really brings the defensive stability that D'Lo and Cat were missing, right? So if Jaden and Ant can step it up on that end, and then Ben Simmons could sort of become the quarterback for the defense, then I think they actually project quite well on that end. If they could just round out the bench very well with guys who can step in, I like the chances.
Yeah, what about like let's say D'Lo, Rubio, Naz Reid? Because Naz Reid has a really, I would say,
Oh, I don't think they give up D'Lo in a package for Simmons. I don't think that happens. I think D'Lo, I think Ant, I think Jaden, and I think Cat. I think those four guys are completely off the table in any Ben Simmons negotiation.
Ricky Rubio would be interesting on the 76ers though.
Yeah, I think like they would give Ricky Rubio, Malik Beasley, Jarrett Culver, and Oh my God, Leandro Balmaro, who was one of their first round picks last year. I think they would send them, and maybe if they, if they get their lottery pick, I could see them sending a top 10 pick as well.
Do you think it's worth it? Rubio, Beasley, Culver, Balmaro, and maybe like another some picks or something, second
I'd
round
be
picks,
reluctant
first
to
round
send
picks.
this year's pick. But if it was a future protected first, like I'd be reluctant to set a top 10 pick in this draft, not gonna lie. But if it was a future protected first, or a like second in this draft, like any second, honestly, 31 and on, then it'd be fine. It's just, or even if it was a late first in this draft, I wouldn't be so upset about it. It's just sending all that plus a top 10 pick in this really stacked draft feels a little heavy for Ben. But other than the pick, I could easily see like Beasley Barbaro, Rubio, Culver as that package from Minnesota. Yeah, I could see those four.
I mean, Beasley, Rubio, Culver. I think, yeah, they have Seth Curry, but Beasley is just so much more dynamic than Seth Curry. He could score on 3 levels. He could drive in, he could shoot mid range, he could shoot the 3. So it's
Yeah,
he
I
just
mean
more
the
explosive.
case.
Yeah.
I
The
mean he hasn't been able to work on. He's going to be in jail all of the off season because of his case. And I know like like off court stuff doesn't affect, but I think in this case it really does affect on court stuff. He's going to have basically almost no training camp. Like he's just going to come in and like having spent his whole time in prison. I just don't know how the nutrition is going to be. Like I'm concerned with his conditioning coming into the season. To be honest with you, so I don't know if I'd be willing to do that with Beasley, especially with his past allegations. Like those are some really serious allegations. It does definitely hurt his value. There's no question about it.
yeah, that might be true. I didn't really think about it to that deeper level, but I was just thinking about it in the basketball level. But yeah, that does make sense. Who knows? Honestly, I don't know what Maury is thinking, but I know Maury loves 3-point shooting, so I don't know if that's enough of shooting wise. Ricky Rubio, Culver, Balmaro, like those are not really shooters. So
Well, maybe they play Beasley. Like maybe they go like 3 guard and they play Beasley at the 3 or something. They do Hill, Curry, Beasley or something, or Maxey, Curry, Beasley, and they try to some 3 guard stuff or end Embiid. I could definitely see them doing that for even more shooting.
I could see him playing the
With
3.
Tobias at the 4,
I could see that
I
as
think
well. Yeah,
I think that would make a lot of sense.
you stretch the floor right there, especially with Ricky Rubio, and
Because
then you
Beasley
have
isn't the smallest either.
he's not small, like he's strong. Especially I don't know what's gonna happen, but he's probably gonna be bigger next season. um,
I wonder why.
yeah, I think he's gonna be bigger next season. A lot of downtime, So, um, I think it's dangerous though. Like Ricky Rubio, Seth Curry, Beasley, you have Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid. Actually, that's not bad, man. You know, and then you could bring off the bench. You're bringing out like Maxey, Thibault, Korkmaz, Danny Green. So you have a 9-man rotation right there.
Yeah, I think they're still missing that bench big, which they might just re-sign Dwight in that case. That's the big thing is that the Raptors can offer is that I think they have the best fitting big for the bench that any other team can offer. And the thing with Boucher is that he's played the 3 and he's even played the 4, but even I would say primarily he's honestly a 4 who can play the 5. And he would be someone who can not only play on the bench with the bench units, but he could also play with Embiid, which I find interesting.
Yeah, and then your Kings have been kind of like on topic, but we both kind of agree that it doesn't really make sense because you're kind of sending Ben Simmons to a place where the Kings would have to start, I guess, deleting some space like Rashawn Holmes, Harrison Barnes, and who would the Kings trade? They would trade Buddy Hield for, I don't know, like it's kind of overlapping with Seth Curry right there because they're both.
And it's also like if you're bringing in Ben Simmons on a team with De'Aaron Fox, so you're basically trying to play like not great creator from 3 and then a non-shooter. How do you expect to play those 2 guys together and then also get rid of Buddy Hield? That's kind of the thing, right? Like you need Buddy Hield on a team with Ben Simmons and De'Aaron Fox. Like it's not a real viable move for us where we send out Buddy Hield and get a Ben Simmons just because our team construction would be absolutely abhorrent and wouldn't be sustainable after that.
I'll give you another team that, like, why don't the Lakers would the Lakers be interested in Ben Simmons? Because it makes sense for the Lakers, I think.
I mean, I don't think the Lakers would be that interested in Ben Simmons from a fit standpoint. If AD can be your, if he can be your 3-point shooting three, I see it. But I don't know what they'd give. I guess they have this year's pick and they have a future first and Talon and maybe they saw. Oh wait, no, they wouldn't be able to because free agency is after. They wouldn't be able to sign and trade Schroeder. So I'm not sure what they would do for the salary in that trade, but it could be interesting, I suppose. What about the Nets? I've been seeing some trades with the Nets that send like Joe Harris and like a bunch of their picks from this year and like some stuff like that for I believe I saw a couple other guys. I don't know if it was
I,
Claxton
I
or
don't
something
know
or
if they.
Shamit.
I think it's too close to the conference. You're gonna have to face this team. I don't think they would.
You don't think Philly would do it?
Nah, I don't think they would either. Either or team would actually be like, hey, let's make your team better.
All right.
You
Well, I want to
know.
hit you with another Nets trade while we're on this.
But
I was
but
and
I
I
was thinking.
s- okay,
But I
go
was
ahead.
thinking about this one last one that actually does make sense. The Hornets.
The Hornets, yeah, it makes some sense if they want to play him as a 4 or a 5 with Ball. I mean, it's never a bad thing to have a lot of good playmakers on your team. That's the thing I see a lot is like I was talking to a Raptors fan today and he was like, I wouldn't want if we won Cade, I wouldn't want Ben Simmons. We already have Fred and Lowry and Siakam and they're good handlers. And it's like, why do you want why is having more good ball handlers and playmakers, smart playmakers, and guys who know what to do when the ball's in their hands? Why is that a bad thing? Why do we want only play finishers? It only becomes a big problem when you have too many of those guys, like you saw in the Bulls, where it's like there's a sense of offense missing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. If anything, you would need more ball handlers. I think just from a fan perspective, especially with the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks, you saw that like James Harden was hampered. The Nets don't really have an extra point guard. They only have Kyrie Irving and sort of James Harden. And they had no one to penetrate. They had no one to dish it to. So KD was playing point guard a lot in that game 7 and game 6 and game 5. So you need ball handlers. And I think if you don't have ball handlers, you get into tough situations and half court possessions because it just becomes very limited. I think the best teams right now have multiple ball handlers. Phoenix Suns, you have Chris Paul and you have Devin Booker, who is a combo guard as well. He could dribble the ball wherever. And also Cameron Payne. So you have three right there. You look at the Clippers, you have about three players that could do it. Rondo, Mann, and Jackson, right? So you have three right there. And then you look back with Atlanta and you have Trae Young, you have Lou Williams, and I would say Herder too. He's actually not that bad at handling the ball as well. He could, drive in and do whatever. And then you have
I think the ideal team is like where everyone can handle the ball a little bit and just be okay with it. I don't think ideally you don't want anybody that can't handle the ball.
there's going to be some exceptions. Obviously, some people just aren't going to have the ability to do that. But I think the more players you have that can handle the ball and pass the ball, it
It's
just
not a
makes
bad thing. It
it's not a
doesn't
bad thing, man.
detract from other players.
It makes things even easier for other players because it's hard. Just if you're a catch and shoot player like maybe Joe Harris, you don't want him dribbling, And I think it was just very noticeable in this playoffs that you don't want him doing anything other than shooting and post up defending. So
That's why it's like it's just such a different. That's why I was so happy we got Halliburton in the draft last year because it's such a different dynamic compared to other guards we could have gotten. Like if we would have picked a Devin Vassell at the time, like sure Devin Vassell might be the better help defender and he might have better instincts and that fits well alongside Fox, but also I like the idea of having somebody who knows kind of what to do when the ball hits their hands. You know what I mean? And Halliburton has that off-ball defense, but and those smarts, but he also has that ability to kind of know what to do when he has the ball in his hands, and he's not going to be a complete idiot, and he can run a pick and roll, and you know that's I really like that, and I think that's a big killer difference that people don't really talk about.
yeah, I think that's why with the Hornets it makes sense because Ben Simmons is automatically a better upgrade than Bismack or Zeller, right? It's just
Right.
and those two centers well are already kind of undersized, so why not play Ben Simmons at that 5 position, 4 position, and then you still have Hayward, you have Ball, you have all these other players. And I think the assets they have, some of them are kind of valuable for Philadelphia. It kind of makes
Mhm.
sense. So I think and Jordan's there, and I think Ben Simmons, Jordan, like I think if anyone could help, it's that dynamic, especially with Ball there. And I think Ball just makes other players better around him. It would be easier for Ben Simmons alley oops and stuff like that, like drives in, pick and roll, stuff like that. It just makes sense. I think, especially.
Have you seen the Pelican stuff? This is the trade I wanted to run by you earlier.
No, man, shoot
The
it, shoot it.
Pelicans want to give you pick 10 for Joe Harris in the draft.
I haven't heard the pick 10 for Joe Harris, but honestly,
Well, they want pick 10 in Bledsoe.
really,
Yeah.
who said that? I haven't seen this trade.
Hella Pels fans. Like, this is all over Pels Twitter. It's because the idea is that they think they're getting Kispert. Did they think David Griffin's just going to take Kispert at 10? So they're just like, fuck it. We'd rather just get out of the Bledsoe contract, and then the Nets can take whoever at 10, and we'll just get a already done Kispert right now for Zion. That's basically the idea they have. I've also seen it expanded, and I swear to God I didn't make this trade. It's just because I live on Kings Twitter. I've seen this trade expanded to include the Kings, where the Nets get Harrison Barnes, the Kings get the 10th pick and Bledsoe, and then the Pelicans get Joe Harris.
I mean,
So the Kings do the salary dump, get the draft pick, and you guys get fucking Barnes. I
yeah.
think you'd rather just have the 10th pick.
I mean, I'd rather have Joe Harris or the 10th pick.
Yeah.
I think the weaknesses of Joe Harris were on full display, and I think it kind of validates some of the points that I have with 3-point shooters and the postseason. It's almost like the Danny Green effect. So, Joe Harris was a disaster in that round. He just played poorly and didn't make open shots, didn't make any shots at all. I mean, he went 3 for 9 in that closing game, and I think it just had to do a lot with the Milwaukee Bucks made him play defense, and I think for 3-point shooters, if you make them play defense all game long, every possession, their legs are gonna get tired, and they're not gonna have the same elevation, not the same shot, not the same routine shooting threes, and it's gonna be off, So I think the Milwaukee Bucks, like Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, put Joe Harris through the ringer, and he felt it on the offensive side. And I think he just completely
He was just clearly outmatched. I mean,
he was
there was like
outmatched and fell apart. He fell apart in the
he was just
playoffs.
the worst player on the floor clearly in the playoffs, and I just think they need to get an upgrade.
Yeah, like he's a great regular season player, but honestly, that was kind of disheartening watching him just completely blow it. But also, it wasn't all his fault because I think Steve Nash has a lot of blame for this. He went to his 6-man. I mean, technically it was a 7-man rotation, but I won't even count like Shaman
Yeah,
playing
it's
like
true. I was
6 minutes.
seeing like basically
So
Kevin Durant was playing
so
the whole game.
he went to a 6-man rotation game 7, right? This is after Kevin Durant played every minute in game 5. So he went 53 minutes in game 7, Kevin Durant, including overtime. And Steve Nash basically went to technically a 7-man rotation, but it was 6-man rotation. Um, and I just completely don't understand it. Like I didn't understand it. I think not using the rotation players that you've used all year and then just kind of excluding them in the most important game of the year just shows that you're a coach that is playing not to lose and not to, right. You're not a coach that's playing to win. You're a coach playing not to lose, and I think that's a dangerous formula, especially in the playoffs, because you're bound to lose if you're that scared of losing. And if you only play 6 players in game 7, even though your players are already exhausted from game 5, I think it just shows a lot of um, inexperience for Steve Nash, especially in that situation. You look at all the other teams; they're playing 8 players at least, man. Even if they get into trouble, you still need some time for your superstars to take a breather. So it was really
Yeah.
disappointing. And I think Joe Harris, yeah, he played like trash, and he underperformed and didn't play to his standard of quality. But also, you have to put some blame on the coach for just, dude. These people are playing 50 minutes a game, and they're playing on both sides of the ball 50 minutes a game. Like, they're not going to have their legs. I don't think you expect a lot from them. And I think in that situation, I think I would have put in Shaman just to have fresh legs for overtime, and he didn't do any of that. So it was kind of disappointing, man. And also Nicholas Claxton barely played. I think
Nicholas Claxton deserved way better than
he
that.
he came in for like one play, and it was for an inbound play where Drew Holiday was inbounding in the last possession of the fourth. It was 1 second to go. They put in Nick Claxton to basically defend, big dude, jump. So to block Drew Holiday's kind of peripheral, and it was just bad, man. It was just it was really disappointing just to see the season end like that, but just completely juicing the hell out of your starting lineup like that was disappointing, man. Blake Griffin, he's a big dude. First of all, he fouled out. Luckily, if not, Steve Nash would have played him the whole game. You're just juicing your lineup, and you literally don't have any fresh legs to come in from the bench, and it was just really
Actually,
bizarre, man.
just quickly while you mention him, do you think Blake comes back next year? I really enjoyed him in Brooklyn.
Honestly, I think he does come back. I think he does come back. I don't think it's going to be a big contract. He already got so much money from the Pistons that he's like, all right, I'm good. So I would be surprised to see him somewhere else. He played
Yeah,
well.
he already made the sort of not mistake, but like he already signed somewhere else for more money and was unhappy. So I think he just kind of wants to finish out his career on a contender like Brooklyn. And I think they're actually like he earned starting sort of worthy minutes by the end of the year. So I think he'll stick around just based on that.
Yeah, for the Brooklyn Nets, I think there's like three players you're really looking to resign. I think it's Bruce Brown. I think it's
Bruce Brown is a must. It's
Jeff
absolute must.
Jeff Green and Blake Griffin. Like Jeff Green, hopefully you could sign him for cheap. I know he doesn't want to sign for the veteran minimum, but like 3 years, 15 mil, that's fine. Or like 2 years,
You still have
uh,
room in your like exception as well. You're
yeah,
like your
two two
taxpayer. So
2 years, 10 mil, and Dinwiddie's probably not going to resign with us. So it is what it is, which sucks. But I think Blake Griffin, Bruce Brown too, because I think he was one of the only players on the Brooklyn Nets that actually wanted to win that game. It was like Kevin Durant, Bruce Brown, and maybe Blake Griffin. Those are like the three players that actually brought it. So Joe Harris, as much
Joe Harris is tradable.
as much as I love him, I think the playoffs only showed that. So I don't think he has it in him to just like be a playoff uh, player, especially in a series like the Milwaukee Bucks, which is just heavy blows. They were just trading blows for blows, and he had so many opportunities to put them up, and he just fell short, man. And I also blame the coach for not just subbing him in, like subbing someone else in. Who I thought Chapman, even though he
He's
didn't play a lot.
overpaid though. I hate to tell you now.
I mean,
I think people will look at that contract.
I don't know if he's overpaid. I think he's better than Bertans and a lot of other players, but I think I don't think he's ready for the Milwaukee Bucks, because I think the Milwaukee Bucks are a serious contender to win the championship this year, and every play was valuable. Every possession was valuable, and I think he was just. I call him an anticipation defender, right? An anticipation defender is a defender who is undersized or maybe lacks athletic ability and has to project or predict what a player is going to do offensively, right? I could put Joe Harris in this category. I could put like Patrick Beverly in this category, right? I could put like Chris Paul in this category. They'll bite on things and they'll try to react before the offensive player does because of their maybe because they're smaller, maybe because they don't have the arm length. But Joe Harris is an anticipation defender. And I think that really got him in trouble in game 6, where he fouled Chris Middleton 3 times on the 3-point line. 3 times. So that's 9 points just off of Joe Harris alone on Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
And the Nets in total fouled him 4 times, Chris Middleton, on the 3-point line, and that's 12 points. So
I think that's a really interesting theory.
In a game like that, you can't win against a team like that if you're going to foul an individual player 4 times at the foul line, at the 3-point line, and give him 12 free throws. That's 12 free points. So Joe Harris alone had 3 of those fouls, and I think it was inexcusable. And I think Steve Nash, who's played a long time and is a Hall of Famer, he had to put like the numbers aside. He like shoo away the numbers and be like, I'm watching this game with my eyes, and Joe Harris just doesn't have it this series, and I think I might have to sub him in for someone else. But he just completely he did like the whole NBA coach stubborn egotistical thing, and he just kept at it. I think it's just a very stubborn approach that he took, and it backfired on him. In all honesty, I think you could have played 2 players there. You know, you could have played Shaman or you could put Tyler Johnson even.
Mhm.
And I think they would have give you a little bit more energy. Even if they didn't give you the points, it would have give you a little bit more energy than Joe Harris was giving, because he was honestly a liability in that series. So it sucks because I love Joe Harris and he's a great regular season player, but he also had a bad series against the Philadelphia 76ers when they were actually going head to head, and it was actually a pretty good series, right? But he exactly the same thing. Philadelphia is super physical. Every possession mattered. Half court offense, half court defense. Like he was just getting put through the ringer, and he also couldn't shoot against the Philadelphia 76ers. The only time he actually did well in the playoffs was I think it was last year, but last year it was versus the Toronto Raptors, and he only played 2 games, and Kyrie Irving was hurt, and Kevin Durant, James Harden wasn't there, and basically there was no pressure. There's no pressure because the Toronto Raptors are only concentrating basically on like Karis LeVert and like Dinwiddie, you know, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, there was really no pressure. They
Oh, that
knew
was the other guy that was in a Simmons trade. It was Dinwiddie and Harris, and like your picks this year for Simmons. That was the trade I saw online.
they basically that happened, and there's no pressure on the team. There's no pressure on Joe Harris, but this year there's a lot of pressure, and he broke, bro. And there's a lot of players that break during playoffs, and
Ben Simmons, which is literally that trade. So I think it does nothing for you guys
yeah,
because Blake, like I don't know if Blake and Simmons are like someone you'd want to play on the court together. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
at least Blake could shoot, bro. I mean, at least he like goes for it, you know?
I assume if you trade for Simmons, like I assume if you do that deal, your lineup is like Harden, Kyrie, Durant, Blake, Simmons at the 5 question mark. That's probably your lineup, I assume. Bruce Brown, Landry Shamet on the bench. It's pretty solid. It's pretty solid. I think there's a lot of teams that are going to call about Ben Simmons. I do think even divisional rivals, like you say, the Nets won't call and neither team will do a deal. That's probably true. It will not stop Sean Marks from calling and trying, at least. If you could, the idea of one of the most switchable, versatile defenders in the league next to, some of the best shot creators, that's a good idea. It's generally a pretty good idea. It's probably something you would want to do. And if you can do it with the guy that disappointed the most in the playoffs and a guy who was injured for the majority of last year, I don't see why you wouldn't, personally. Picks aren't going to do that much for you right now.
Yeah. With after watching that series, I was like, no, we need like a 3-and-D type of dude. And Joe Harris might not be it for the starting lineup. I think he's just undersized. I think you look at like the Phoenix Suns who have like Mikal Bridges, and you're like, damn, dude, Mikal Bridges, like this guy's amazing. Could shoot the 3. He could play defense. Amazing cuts. He's an amazing
But I'm
cutter.
so excited about this year's class, man. There's like, well, last year it was Vassell, right? That was the guy that was kind of like Mikal that we're all getting excited about. But like this year, it's Moses Moody and like Franz Wagner a little bit, who I've actually heightened up a little bit on recently. It's just like people have ragged a little bit too hard on Franz Wagner, but that's for a draft episode later on. I still think he's like bottom of the lottery. I don't think he's a top 10 worthy guy, but I do think Franz is like versatile enough as a role player, and I do think he's just like solid enough at a baseline level that he's worth taking at the end of the lottery, but not like literally 14th, 15th pick here. We're not talking about like top 12 picks. I wouldn't take Franz in the top 12.
I think what the Nets are missing is a natural born cocky scorer. Someone like Karis LeVert, someone like Kevin Porter Jr., like someone that's just
I mean, they have Kevin Durant and they have Harden.
No, but I mean like the
have
thing
Kyrie.
yeah, but the thing is like you need someone off the bench to believe like that, have that confidence.
You want a guy that just says fuck it and chuck it on the bench. Like I kind of understand that because our bench was not going to necessarily he was a little bit gun shy at the beginning of the year in Sacramento. But when we traded for Terrence Davis, when we traded it for Terrence Davis, his just ability to say fuck it and just pull it. He was willing to do it, man, and it changed things. It changed things. It changed all the energy on the bench because they would come out aggressive, energetic, and it was all around basically just Terrence Davis chucking
Look,
shots, and he wasn't hitting all of them either.
this
But
is
it changed the atmosphere.
this is what happened in the game versus Utah and the Clippers. You know, it was a good game, and then Terrence Mann just took over. Terrence Mann is, is a great
He's
player
good.
from Florida State, but at the same time, like he has the confidence to be like, you know what, they're doubling Paul George. You know, everyone's off. I gotta go for it. You know, and I think Herder had the same mentality.
So
So it's
you're basically saying you need secondary scoring. You're just too front loaded right now.
too heavy, too front loaded, and you need a microwave scorer off the bench. Even Atlanta, they were going to
Would
lose this.
Dinwiddie not have helped with that though? Like, wouldn't
Dinwiddie, yeah,
waiting for Dinwiddie next year and just running it back, would that not be kind of
Din,
viable?
Dinwiddie would have helped a lot. It's just you need a confident microwave scorer off the bench, and I think for Atlanta as well, beside Kevin Herter, that game when they came back from 26, Lou Williams actually had a big uh role to play in that comeback because he was the one that kind of brought them back from the 26 point because he started it. And he was just a microwave scorer. He started scoring the bench for his bench. You know, he got the ball rolling for Atlanta in that game, and I think that's what you need as a secondary. It's a different time in the NBA. If your bench is not scoring, I mean, in the last game, Game 7 versus Brooklyn, Milwaukee, the bench did not score for Brooklyn. They scored 0 points. So you can't win games without scoring off your bench anymore in the NBA. That's like prehistoric shit. So I mean, like you need scorers on your bench to just come in and do what they have to do. Even like Maxey, dude. Ben Simmons wasn't cutting it. Maxey came in, he started scoring. You know, even like
Yep.
Shake Milton. You know,
Maxey is solid, man. He's really solid.
you need players, you need microwave scorers on the bench because not everyone's gonna be hot on your starting lineup, man. You need a person that's like, hey, the lineup's not doing it. I'm just gonna go for it. So I think someone like Bones Highland from
Derek
that's
Alston Jr. We just watched him.
yeah,
Derek Alston
exactly.
Jr. fits 2 to 4 lineup holes, microwave scorer at 6'9", super shifty ability to create his own shot, not only at the rim, but on the outside at the perimeter. I mean, one of the best transition shooters and also just one of the best movement shooters in college in general. But yeah, him, Bones Highland, Max A. Smith from Oral Roberts, guys like that would be fantastic.
You need it. Yeah, like Highland
Cam
reminds
Thomas.
like he reminds me of like Maxey, but a better 3-point shooter. So it's like, yeah, you need someone confident, score, go getter, and I think the Nets know that now because I think if you have injuries on the squad, you need players that can score because you can't have like people that are passive and
You just need a
not
bucket.
looking.
You
Yeah,
need a
because
bucket.
a lot of these players they weren't even looking at the basket because they were so scared, and the moment caught up to them. So you definitely need someone like that, and you know it is what it is. But the Phoenix Suns, I'm totally excited about. I think I remember telling you in the beginning of the year that the Jay Crowder contract was a steal because they paid 3 for 30 for Jay Crowder from the Miami Heat, and it is just paying off right now, right? It's just
It
paying.
is. And the thing is, even when Crowder starts to fall off, they got Cam Johnson ready to just step in, and that's not going to be much of a fall off. Both of them have been fantastic.
What about DeAndre Ayton has been?
A revelation.
Oh my God, man! Like when he's in the paint, he doesn't miss. It's great, and I honestly one of his underrated skills is his passing ability.
Yeah, and just his passing ability and his ability just to disrupt shots without making a block. Because he's just not the flashiest block numbers in the world, but you know the amount of shots he's able to get guys off their base or just off their, off their comfort level and affect that shot, therefore making it miss, is something that just isn't recorded nearly enough.
Yeah. I mean, Ayton has been. Oh my God, man! His pick and roll with Devin Booker, it's almost unstoppable. Because
It is.
Devin Booker goes off that pick and roll, and he just hits a mid range. Yeah, it's like an easy elbow shot for him. So people think that Aiden's gonna roll, and he's so dangerous with the roll that people are double him, fronting him, and
Man,
yeah,
all this Booker playmaking just makes me wish that they had picked Halliburton or Vassell over Jalen Smith, because once Chris Paul leaves, they could do the thing and unlock Point Booker and play him with, Vassell or Halliburton at the 2, McHale at the 3, assuming Jay Crowder is probably done at the same time around Chris Paul is done. So you'd probably be playing Cam Johnson at the 4 and then DeAndre Ayton at the 5, and you're still set going forward. Even after CP and Jay Crowder are done, you'd be good to go. Like, but I mean, Jalen Smith was it's the easiest thing to criticize, right, from their offseason. They did pretty much everything else right. It's just
Yeah,
crazy when you think about this team. This team gave away TJ Warren for nothing. They could have TJ Warren at the 4 right now, and they could have like Halliburton or Vassell on this team as well.
yeah.
It's just wild to think about that.
With Smith, it's almost like I'm like, okay, maybe it's not working out this year, but it's almost an overlap. It's hard for him to get in the game because he's not going to get into the game. Like there's no, there's no movement for him to get into the game. So right now I'm kind of like, oh, okay, like maybe
Well,
it's
what's
like,
even more concerning is that he shot 38% from the field as a big when he went to the G League this year. Like the dude didn't shoot over 40% from the field as a center.
nah,
That's
he needs more time. Yeah. And I can't kind of speculate on that because I haven't seen him a lot in the NBA right now. So I think maybe give it like a year or two because I think that's more a development pick than anything. Most of the other picks have kind of, I mean, seriously, Cameron Payne, dude, Toronto Raptors
campaign,
said
man. He proved me
campaign.
wrong.
Yo, dude, he was on the Toronto Raptors, and they just straight up like tossed him, But also in the interviews that I've seen with him,
I'm just blown away with Cam's
I think,
progress.
I think he's very self-reflective, and I think it was in due part to himself, like not making those teams, because I think he said it like he's like, I took advantage of my time in these places because I thought, I was just good, but I really didn't listen. So it's a really interesting arc for campaign. Really, really interesting. I mean, he's a valuable piece for the Suns, honestly. When Chris Paul is out, he pushes the pace like no one else, and he could hit down the three and he could drive in. He's a lefty. It's crazy that I'm talking about campaign right now, and it's crazy. But this happens in championship runs, like you just have one of those players that like JJ Barea ish, like he might not be the biggest, he might not be the strongest, but he just willed. I think it's just insane, especially in that Lakers series. Is like him and Schroeder and everyone. He was just getting into it. So shout out to campaign, man, inspiring
He's just the short
all the
kings out there.
all the short kings and the bony men. Like right there. He's just you know, yo, it's crazy, man. But the
Because
Phoenix,
I think it was an ego check for him that needed to happen, and I'm curious to see if there's any great players that happens to.
bro, he was almost in Guangdong. Cracks.
He really was. He really, really was. I wonder if there's any players that are like failing now that need that. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe a Kobe White or something needs a reality check just on that he's not that great of a shot creator, to be
He did
honest.
well last.
He wasn't that great last year. I don't know. Bulls fans were not happy with the guy. I think he carries value, but I don't think he was amazing.
Denzel Valentine, though, that's a player, man. Like, that's a player that needs a reality check because last year he was trying some shots that were crazy. Did you ever see
Yeah,
that? He went for like a transition pull up three, and everyone's like, "What are you doing? What do you?" Oh, even his teammates were like their hands were up, like, "What are you doing, man?"
stop, stop.
So, yeah, man, I think that's the Phoenix Suns and the first game against the Clippers. The Phoenix Suns ran Devin Booker at the point guard a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had a lot
They
of
just announced
possession.
that Chris Paul's not going to be playing for game 2.
Yeah, and honestly, him at the point guard position is just like chaos for the defense. It's chaos.
It really is because he's just such a great on ball shot creator, but then he's also like he's just a sneaky good passer that teams just don't expect.
So they're calling Ben Simmons Tragic Johnson now.
Oh my god, that's a fucking good ass name. I don't know, just move his ass to the 4 or the 5, get him on a team that actually has spacing around him, like Minnesota or Toronto. Please, just please. I also just I wonder if there's a chance that like Indiana explores the trade of like the swapping of Sabonis and Simmons. I think a lot of people would argue that Sabonis is the better offensive player, but defensively, I don't think it's that close between the two. I mean, Simmons is just miles better as a defender, and I think if you put him with a spacing big like Miles Turner and gave him the offensive opportunities Miles Turner has, or sorry, that Sabonis has, I think maybe that makes sense as a swap. I don't think Pacers fans would be for it, but I think it would be interesting personally.
So let's talk about one of the last subjects. How do you think the Atlanta Hawks got to this point?
How do I think that they got to this point? I mean, just having a really, really deep team, to be honest with you. I'm surprised they're at this point. Like I don't want to say they shouldn't, but I am surprised. Nobody would have pegged them to be this far, right? Nobody would have pegged them to beat Philly if they were just guessing honestly. Nobody would have said Nate McMillan was going to be the coach that turns a playoff, because just Nate McMillan's rep for so many years was that he wasn't the coach to get you over the hump. So the fact that he is the coach to get this team over the hump is hilarious to me. After being dumped from Indy, and they go with Bjergren, and Bjergren's an absolute disaster, and it's kind of just funny how that all works out. But yeah, I think the way the Hawks have done it is just by being really deep and drawing a lot of fouls. I think it's an important part of playoff basketball. Just being really crafty and really, really
Aggressive.
scrappy and aggressive. Just getting your fouls, getting inside and getting to the line for guaranteed points is something that really just can't be beat when it comes to playoff basketball. So I think they're playing playoff ball, and they've all stepped up a little bit defensively. I think the amount of work that John Collins has put in this year defensively is big, and doesn't get spoken about enough. I think Hunter has obviously been great when he plays for them defensively. Capella's been a fantastic rim protector. They got him for like a first round pick, so that ended up being a really great trade for them. So I think, I think Schlenk has definitely justified his reason for picking TRAE, maybe not by a better fitting player perspective, but not from a more talented player perspective, but from a better fitting player perspective. When you look at the construction of the team and the vision he had and what he wanted to build, Trae Young made more sense for that than Luka. But I don't think Trae Young is still the better overall player. I don't.
Yeah, it's it's a conversation though. It really is. It's a conversation. It really is a conversation. I think the Atlanta Hawks are a good mesh of like modern ball and old school basketball. I think it's a great mesh. So, like, what do you mean by a great mesh, Eric? What do you mean? Um, I think they accept the fact that you have to shoot threes, but also that they accept the fact that like drawing fouls and free throws, this kind of old school mentality, paint points, that matters as well. And I think a lot of teams within these playoffs kind of forgot the foundation or just fundamentals of basketball, especially playoff basketball, and where the fouls matter. These fouls matter. I think putting players into um, putting players in foul trouble is really essential to win a basketball game. I think if you, let's say, for example, player A, right? He's amazing. He scores 25 points a game, right? But you put him in foul trouble in the first quarter and he has 3 fouls. He's not going to score those 25 points. And if he is, he's going to do it in like his attempts aren't going to be as efficient. So, um I think it's like really interesting what Nate McMillan has accomplished there. I think there's a heavy reliance on Trae Young, but he's able to, kind of take on that responsibility. And he has, even though he was off in like game 7 and they could have lost that game, I think the coaching of Nate McMillan kind of allowed him to win that game. They played great defense. They're scrappy. They go for balls. They'll claw you to death. Gallo. They have these players that maybe people thought or wrote
Gallo
off.
has been underrated his whole career. Let's be honest here.
I wrote off Gallo because he wasn't moving well in the beginning of the year, and I was like, this guy's cooked, bro. He looked like Al Horford out there moving, but now in the playoffs he looks a little bit healthier. He's shooting down threes, and I think those players, those veteran players that can nail down threes, are really valuable in playoff runs. Like Gallo, as many injuries as he's had, he's had playoff experience and he's a great 3-point shooter. And I think you need that as a young like any playoff team needs that. And I think you look around the league and there's always one of them there. You know, there's one veteran 3-point shooter right there. And you could look up and down every roster and you'll see him. You'll find them right there. So especially with the 4 teams left over, like Jay Crowder, he's in Phoenix Suns, nailing threes. Then you have Milwaukee, even like PJ Tucker, Brooke Lopez, veterans, playoff games like under the belt, they can nail down threes. Brooke
What about
Lopez
Seth
had
Curry?
Seth Curry, they're no longer there, but
He's
Brooke Lopez,
still a good bet to have.
yeah, of course. I mean, and then you have Clippers, even like Reggie Jackson, dude. Like, come on.
Marcus Morris has been an underrated 3-point shooter.
Reggie Jackson has been nailing. So like I think it's a very valuable thing to have. And I think teams should be looking. It's a very talented league right now, and I think it's changing every season, right? The NBA. So I think it's just become more complex. It really has. And I think the modern NBA where people are like, it's just 3-pointers and layups. I think it's changing a little bit. I think we went so far to one side and we're coming back towards the middle, right? Because
Yeah, because I think you kind of almost saw an extreme swing where it was like bigs were dominating for like the past 2 years, and I think we are hitting that middle ground now, where it was like shooters, and then past I don't know 2 years or so been like really heavily emphasis on bigs a little bit, like Young's double MVP, a lot of Rudy Depoys, Embiid dominance, Jokic dominance. You were looking at the bottom, the top 4 teams in the bubble, like I think it was Miami and LA, and the other 2 teams all both had bigs. I think it was Denver and someone else. So the teams really, like, all those teams needed their bigs. You know what I mean? Like it was a very and now I think it is kind of evening out, but I think the expectation for bigs to have guard skills is still there. I think it was kind of a rubber band period where it's like bigs weren't forced to accept to change, you know what I mean? Change their ways, change their game. And they were kind of playing more of a back to the basket kind of game, more of a post game. And then it was like they weren't changing. And then their value went down and down and down and down and down. And then it was like, well, shit, we need to change or else we'll be out of the league soon. And then you saw guys kind of pick up guard skills that were a little bit bigger. And once those guys did and they started, showing these skills, like, Jokic and AD and, Embiid, even they can all create from the perimeter and shoot threes. A Cat can shoot threes. Like, these guys can all shoot threes now. So it's like, I think that's what made it, kind of the resurgence of the big is more because bigs became skilled.
yeah, honestly, man, it's I think the post play has sort of been eliminated in a way. Only kind of elite players post up now. Like you'll see like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, there's Kawhi Leonard. They're still posting up, but they're like elite superstars. But if you're kind of like average to below average, you're not posting up at all because technically, numbers wise, it is kind of like a low percentage shot, unless you're a superstar, because you're just a scorer. But there is kind of like this resurgence of bigs. Like you see the Atlanta Hawks, they have two, Clint Capella and John Collins. And then you have Milwaukee Bucks, you have Giannis, you have Brook Lopez, right? And then you have
Mhm.
on the West Coast, you have Ayton. You have like this big that can switch off defenders, is super lanky, and then you have like the Clippers who don't really rely on bigs, right? But they have length to their team, right? Like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, like those are pretty big forwards to say the
Yeah.
least. Yeah, so it's really interesting, and I think the dive has become really valuable, like the dive to the basket, because I think point guards are becoming so excellent at passing that the dive is almost like an easy points for a big because they're jumping right in front of the hoop. It's almost
Hmm.
like a layup for them. So I think it's become more valuable, and you see it with Trae Young and Clint Capella and John Collins. Like he goes off the pick and roll and just swings it. It's really a great thing to see, especially Phoenix Suns as well with DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker. And I do like where we are right now as a whole, basketball community. I think we did go in that huge swing because of like Steph Curry, you know, like we were just shooting. We still are. I think for me, I think some teams are shooting too many threes and they're relying a lot on the 3-pointers, which technically, if you're not a good defensive team and you're not making your threes, it's a big liability because your defense is never going to get set and the other team is going to be running on you heavy. So I think there's like you have to kind of like recenter yourself as a team and think like, all right, maybe like if it's not going our way with 3-pointers, we drive in, try to get fouls and stuff like that. And it matters, right? So I think the playoffs itself, the play has gotten really complex. I think it's almost like we have to start reevaluating the game the way we look at it. You know, so it's a really amazing kind of thing. And I'm really like there's casuals that are like, oh, Lakers aren't in it, you know, like, oh, like
Yeah,
Portland's
that's
at it.
the. It's
I
really
hate it,
toxic
man.
when people are
Yeah.
saying that.
Like, bro, I'm excited that the Phoenix
I'm
Suns,
excited that
yeah,
fucking new personnel is coming along and new NBA faces are making a name for themselves. That's what I'm excited about. I'm excited that the old guard is kind of moving on and then that there's these new guys that are coming in.
it's some boomer lexicon happening on Twitter, and I'm not going for it, you know. So I'm excited. I mean, honestly, I as a kid, I always watched the Phoenix Suns as a kid as well because I used to watch like Charles Barkley, Marley, and Eddie Johnson and stuff like that. I always was a big Suns fan. So if they win a championship, that'll be and their crowds are crazy.
I'm
You
I'm
know?
cheering for them going forward.
And the Clippers never won a championship before. They're a laughing stock, and now they're there, man. And then you have Milwaukee, who hasn't won a championship in since like Kareem, and then you have the Atlanta Hawks, who are the underdogs basically, and are punching above the weight, but it doesn't really matter. So it's an
I think TRAE might give Giannis some trouble. I'm not gonna lie. Like that seems like a bad matchup. You know, you saw the Hawks struggle a lot with these teams that had a lot of perimeter creation, like the Heat last year. Or sorry, you saw the Bucks struggle a lot with these teams with perimeter creation, like the Heat last year,
they're gonna
right?
put Drew Holiday on him, dude, 100%.
They're gonna throw. It's gonna be really dependent on like how good Trae's shoulder is. If he's just not good, and he's because I know that was taped up. If he's not,
Milwaukee, Milwaukee is such a physical team, dude. PJ
I
Tucker,
have a lot of trouble
basically
seeing them
UFC fighter,
losing.
you know,
Yeah,
like he's a UFC fighter. I mean,
he was attacking Kevin Durant, like literally just beating
yeah,
his
man, he
ass.
is beating. Yo, dude, it was crazy. I mean, they're a fucking physical and visceral team, Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah,
Like they're not the same team as old because I
they want to
think
win.
last year they would have folded in that game 7 and they didn't. So I actually was really impressed on how they came back. And Drew Holiday, even though he played like ass the whole game, he made like some crazy shots at the end of that game in overtime. So props to them. I think they do have this is their shot to go to the championship and win. And I think like it would be really interesting to see like Phoenix versus Milwaukee. That's just an interesting matchup. I think the DeAndre Ayton versus like Giannis or Brook Lopez stuff like that. It's interesting because Brook Lopez will eventually like Ayton will have to step out of his a little bit of his comfort zone, even though he's so lanky that honestly he could keep up with twos, you know. So it's gonna be a really interesting matchup. It's still not set in stone if Phoenix is gonna win, but I do like their chances of winning. And I'm just excited for a new champion. In all honesty, I think if you're a basketball fan, these teams are exciting. You know, like I thought the Clippers were gonna lose and they actually came back. You know,
Yeah, I'm surprised the Clippers have moved on, man. Terrence Mann was the one to break the curse, which is wild.
I, honestly, I think you have to give Kenny Atkinson some props over there because if it was still Doc Rivers, Terrence Mann would never play. You know, like if he still had that, if Doc Rivers is still coaching over there and his assistants were still there and stuff like that, Terrence Mann would never get that opportunity. And I think Kenny Atkinson just has a knack to develop some like shooting guards. So I think it's a detriment to that to like Doc, and it's just telling that what the Clippers are doing. Also, Lou coached a hell of a game. I know a lot of people hate on him. Myself, like me myself, sometimes I hate on Lou, but he coached a hell of a game, like a hell of a series versus Utah. He did. It almost like I was like, oh, this kind of made me respect you because before he was coaching LeBron James, so it's almost like I know LeBron James is like basically half player, half coach at this point in his career. So I think that Utah series made me respect Lou a little bit more.
Yeah,
Exciting,
Lou.
man.
I mean, Lou has been like one of the best coaches when it comes down to clutch games that he needs to win, which is that's I mean that's really interesting to me because it just seems like he steps up at the right time and he's a coach that it's kind of the opposite of Doc Rivers where his he gets his players to step up when it matters the most as opposed to and he prepares them for the big moment as opposed to you saw LeBron's team come back in the finals. You've seen now the Clippers come back, and I just don't think Doc. If Doc was coaching the Cavs back then, or he was coaching the Clippers this year, I don't think either team makes those comeback.
Yeah, I think there's a there's a big component that I like in coaches, and I think we went over this before, but it's when coaches they coach to win, right? They're not coaching not to lose. Like they go for it, right? And I think you have to trust your team in those situations to go for it. Trust your team, right? You've been
Mm.
through hell the whole season. Trust your team at the end of the season. Because I think if you don't trust your team at the end of the season, it always comes back to like bite you in the ass. So props to them. Honestly, very excited for basketball. Very excited for the community. And yeah, we have. Are you working on anything? Let's tell anyone if you're working on anything. Actually, the newsletter comes out every Friday.
My
And
top 60 board is done. Like my top 60 for my big board, I'll be expanding it to like 80 prospects soon. But yeah, my top 60 for my big board is done. So if that's something at least.
yeah, and that's great. And the newsletter comes out on Friday, so if it's done before then, everyone should see it. I'm working on a piece on how Little Wayne influenced a generation of basketball hoopers, which is really interesting because I think and there was a big boom of like Little Wayne from like '03 to like '09, and in those times like legendary basketball players were drafted, career arcs and stuff like that. And I think it's like interconnected, in all honesty. So that's what I've been working on. It was nice chatting with you, Dimitri, first time in a while. But yeah, it was fun chatting.
Hell yeah,
Until
man.
next time, everyone, you can follow us on Twitter at the Courtsiders with an extra S at the end, because someone
Yeah, I
actually.
keep having to change my bio because you
I know,
change it
man.
and then
I'm
it
sorry.
leads to nothing.
I'm sorry. I apologize, man. I always try to find the best SEO, and I'm like, damn, man, someone really has the Courtsiders, but they don't use their account, so I'm
So
whatever.
tragic, man.
So but you could visit our, website, thecourtsiders.com, and subscribe to our newsletter, which is for free. You get great content for free. Once
Mock
again,
drafts, articles, little
yeah,
insights, little tidbits, nice, wonderful art from this man himself.
and you could, listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, fucking the dark web, whatever. We're all over the internet, so it doesn't
We're
really
all
matter.
over the place.
Yeah,
You can find us in a back alley dumpster. Find us
they,
on a cassette tape.
Huzzah, LimeWire Pro, anything, man.
Have
Yeah.
a good
All
one,
right, dude.
guys.
Peace.